5 a.m. in New York City. Good morning, I'm Bonnie Quinn with your Bloomberg Brief. Here's what you need to know. Gold sets its 50th daily record this year as traders bet on more rate cuts and escalating geopolitical tensions. The dollar weakens on yen strength after more verbal intervention in Japan. President Trump warns Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro not to play tough. He also says the U.S. has to have Greenland. Plus, Danish pharma giant Novo Nordisk soaring today after winning approval to sell a pill version of Wegovy in the United States. So let's have a look at these markets. We are up more than 17% on the S&P 500 year to date, and it looks like we might be trending a little higher again today. Earlier, futures were lower. It did seem like we might see a wobble in risk sentiment, but we're firmly higher once again. The Nasdaq 100 futures pointing to a gain as well. Russell 2000 futures, they've been outperforming this holiday season, but unchanged right now. We do get, of course, the second print of US GDP later on today. We'll be looking at personal spending in particular. Maybe there won't be too much of a difference between the first print and the second print. We are seeing a tiny bit of a movement in yields, just a basis point lower pretty much across the board. It's in Japan where most of the action is happening today with more verbal intervention. That yen strengthening, but will it hold? And that is the question. We're at 156 on the dot, so hasn't really got back to pre-BOJ levels yet. All right, let's get to some individual movers now. We'll get over the pond to London and Lizzie Burden. Lizzie.
Hey, Vonnie, well, you flagged it. Novo Nordisk is where we've got to begin this morning. It's already seeing gains in the European session. This, of course, is the Danish drug maker. As you say, it's won approval for its Wegovy obesity pill, but that gives it a head start on its rival Eli Lilly, also set to get approval for its obesity pill in a few months into 2026. But it looks like Novo is going to be able to capitalise on those New Year's resolutions. So up more than 7% in the pre-market. Turning over, we also are winding Huntington Ingalls rising after the US announced that it had picked that company to design and build a new class of small warship, the Trump-class warship. So up 87% so far year to date and up nearly 5% in the pre-market. Finally, we turn from shipbuilding to shipping. Zim rising after it said that it's continuing to evaluate proposals from various potential buyers. It says that it's already turned down an offer from a German suitor because it just wasn't a high enough value. And so those shares up 7.3% in the pre-market, Bonnie.
A nice gain for Zim there. Lizzie, thank you so much. That's Lizzie Burden. Coming up in this hour, we're going to speak to Mads Pedersen of Human Edge Investment Technology. Well, as the year starts to come to a close, equities are extending their record-breaking run as traders await some of the latest remaining data sets of 2025. Joining us now is Bloomberg's Kit Rees. So, Kit, what's been the biggest driver of this rally in global stocks? Could it potentially last into next year, or are we seeing just a Santa Claus rally?
Yes, it looks like traders globally could be getting a Christmas gift in the form of a Santa rally to end the year. So we've got stocks in the US and in Europe, both holding close to record levels. And what's been really driving it is this improved optimism over the AI trade. So if we look at some of the biggest contributors to the S&P 500 gains this month, it's been companies such as Tesla, Micron, Nvidia. So it looks like this sentiment towards AI is improving. But this is also coming off the back of last week's central bank bonanza when there were a lot of risk events, so it could be a little bit of relief. But also it's good to note that, we're coming into the festive period. Liquidity could be thinning out as traders go off on holiday. So it could be a fact that the path of least resistance is simply higher. So we could see that equities continue to grind higher, given also a kind of a lack of catalysts.
It's pretty amazing to see the VIX at 14, right? It had its lowest close of the year yesterday, which was really insane to me.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it just goes to show that, there's improving sentiment and, things are perhaps getting brighter. We've got over these central bank meetings and the outlook is a little bit brighter in terms of the Fed, in terms of the economy. So overall, it seems that this optimism is carrying through into the year end.
Kit, what are the biggest risks out there? Because it does seem like sentiment can get fragile very, very fast. We saw that with AI several times over the last few months.
Oh, definitely, yes. So, a couple of risks that we're watching. One of the big ones is geopolitics. We've had these tensions rumbling in Venezuela recently, also with Ukraine and Russia, and the tariffs between the US and China. So, this is something that, if we get a deterioration there, could really knock sentiment. Also, the broader picture with the AI trade, companies have poured billions of dollars into investing in data centers. So traders are going to be wanting to see this pay off next year. So the bar's going to be really high for earnings from some of these big players. So this has really powered the rally in US stocks. So it'll be interesting to see if this continues. And also questions over whether the US might be heading towards a recession, those kind of worries, uncertainty over the Fed's rate path forward. All of these things could derail sentiment if, traders see what they don't like.
Yeah, exactly. We'll start to get more dependable data in January, that's for sure. Bloomberg's Kit Rees, thank you so much for joining. And turning back now to Novo Nordisk, which has won approval to sell a pill version of its blockbuster obesity shot Wegovy in the United States. Bloomberg's Copenhagen bureau chief, Sarah Scholin, joins us now for more. Sarah, how significant could this be for the bottom line for Novo Nordisk?
This could be quite significant. We've been waiting for a piece of good news for them for a while, and now we finally have it. I can't say that this was totally unexpected, though, because Novo has already guided that they will probably get the approval from the FDA before the end of the year. And in Denmark, markets are closed the rest of this week, a few days next week. So it really was about now that we wanted to see an update on this.
Yeah,
that should not take away. Sorry, go ahead, Winnie.
Just, it was amazing to see the share price pop 7% at the open, but, that was obviously on thin trading volume. As you say, some of this might be priced in, but it could help reinvigorate Novo's slumping share price all the same, couldn't it?
Absolutely. They've had such a brutal year in the stock market. The stock is down almost 50%, even with today's big jump. Had a new CEO, had to cut 11% of the workforce, issued several profit warnings. This has really, really been a tough year. Now they're starting 2026 on a strong footing. They're already launching the pills in January, maybe when everyone's coming in after the Christmas holiday, thinking maybe it's good to shed a few of those extra ham pounds. So this is definitely another piece of good news we're waiting for. But it's not to say that all the troubles are over. They still have Eli Lilly as a major competitor out there, and we expect Eli Lilly to get their approval for their obesity pill maybe in March or April. So Novo Nordisk has a head start of about 3 to 4 months. They could, and they probably will, do everything they can to leverage and capitalize on this first move advantage, but that's what people are going to be looking at now.
There are some challenges ahead. Of course, you mentioned one of them, competition with Eli Lilly. What others are there for Novo?
They're going through this major transformation, turning at the company. The new CEO, Mark Duster, he took over in August, and he's come out all guns blazing. In the US, I'm sure you're all aware, there's a bidding war with Pfizer for Metsera. He's also shaking up internal company culture at Novo Nordisk. He's wanted to go from a more culture-based to a more performance-based, which is really difficult for some of the Danes that are there. So he needs to internally bring the company into a shape that he likes it to be able to compete with Eli Lilly. And then he really has to also gain the trust of the market again, that Novo can become this maybe the biggest player, or at least a big player in the obesity market, and then maybe put some of these missteps aside that they've had over the last year.
Sarah, thank you so much. That is Bloomberg's Sarah Scholin there. And she mentioned the Novo CEO. He's actually going to be on today on surveillance. Mike Duster, the CEO that just took over in August, will be on at 8:15 New York time. So do catch that interview. President Trump ramps up threats against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro.
He could do whatever he wants. It's all right. Whatever he wants to do. If he wants to do something, if he plays tough, it'll be the last time he's ever able to play tough.
This all as the U.S. steps up its blockade of oil tankers going to and from Venezuela. Bloomberg's Kasia Klimashinska joins us now from Washington. So a sort of a veiled threat there, Kasia, as we heard from the president. I mean, he's not saying that he's going to do something, but he's definitely not taking it off the table. What are the options being discussed in Washington?
President Trump is actually in Florida this week, and yesterday he met with the press while presenting his plans for new battleships, new warships for the U.S. He was surrounded by his top military officials, by Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Navy, and also Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and he issued this warning for Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro, saying that Venezuela should not test or challenge the U.S. He was speaking as the U.S. seized several tankers, chased one of them away, and President Trump said yesterday that the U.S. will keep the oil from those vessels. A new step, a highly unusual one, as President Trump seeks to really cut off the source of revenue for Venezuela and put pressure on Nicolas Maduro. But still, he stopped short of saying that the Venezuela leader should go, that there needs to be a regime change. We also know that the U.S. is targeting boats that the U.S. says are carrying illegal drugs, such as cocaine, from Venezuela to the U.S. And there's always the threat of some sort of intervention on Venezuela territory.
Moving to a different theatre now, and it appears that even after it was said that there were constructive talks at the weekend, Ukraine came under fire again this morning.
Unfortunately, and so President Trump spoke about that a little bit yesterday with very limited optimism. He said that the talks that happened over the weekend, also in Florida, went okay. These were meetings between Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and top representatives from Ukraine, and also some representatives of the EU, but we didn't really hear anything much beyond the talks being constructive. It doesn't sound like there was any progress made there, in part perhaps because Ukraine doesn't want to agree to the initial plan that was worked out between the US and Russia, and Ukraine is also very interested in long-term security guarantees from the US.
Speaking of long-term security, what's going to happen to Greenland? President Trump seems to have renewed his push to actually take over the island somehow.
Clearly, it's top focus for President Trump here in December at the end of the year, the national security. And so he said yesterday that for the reasons of national security, the U.S. has to have Greenland. Very controversial comment, of course, because Greenland is a territory of Denmark. But Trump said that there are Russian and Chinese ships all around it, that Denmark is not putting enough money there. And he denied those claims that the U.S. is interested in the island because of its mineral and energy resources. He again emphasized that it's more because of national security. He even appointed a special envoy to pursue this idea of taking some sort of control of the island.
Kasia, thank you so much for all of that context. That's Bloomberg's Kasia Klimashinska in Washington. Now to other top stories trending on the terminal this morning. President Trump says he believes, quote, people are very angry that pictures are being released that connect them to Jeffrey Epstein. He says he hated to see former President Bill Clinton being tarnished by the association, describing the situation as terrible. The Justice Department released thousands of pages of photographs and phone records, but much of the release was heavily redacted. Sources say Saks is considering Chapter 11 bankruptcy as a last resort. It has more than $100 million debt payment due at the end of this month. The company is also weighing additional ways to shore up liquidity, including raising emergency financing or selling assets. And Japan's finance minister has issued the strongest warning yet to currency speculators following the yen's weakening, even after a rise in interest rates. In an exclusive interview with Bloomberg, Satsuki Katayama said officials have a free hand to take action.
We have an agreement with the United States that allows us to intervene whenever the yen makes an excessive move. That means we have a free hand.
And coming up, Bank of America says the AI effect is kicking in and that you'll feel it even more in the economy next year. More from our interview with CEO Brian Moynihan next. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Bonnie Quinn in New York. Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan says the U.S. economy will be strong next year, due in part to companies ramping up AI investments. He spoke to Bloomberg's David Weston.
The AI investment's been building during the year and is probably a bigger contributor next year and the years beyond. And so if you look at the data center build out, which is one of the ways it evidences itself, that's a big deal. If you look at client spending, like us spending on AI, that's higher than it was last year. But frankly, overall spending levels are shifting towards that, not necessarily growing at a mid-single digit rate type of number. So I think that's part why the reason we feel constructive for next year. We think AI spending continues. We think there's benefits to the American taxpayer from tax rebates, lower taxes due to the tax bill going through and being effective for next year. And we think the expensing and other bonuses for businesses are good. So all that leads to our confidence that we go from basically a 2% type of growth level this year, plus or minus, up to 2.4%, which is all due to that. And AI is kicking in more and more. And so it's not all attributable to AI, but that's having a marginal impact that's pretty strong.
So much of the American economy is supported by the consumer. And you at Bank of America have a really powerful viewpoint into the American consumer. How's the American consumer doing? Because it has been very strong. There have been some people saying it's starting to slow down.
You have to step back. We look at American consumers, 70 million consumers, putting $4.5 trillion plus into the American economy every year. And we've tracked the way that goes in the American economy for many years. And so in the third quarter, it was up about 5% over last year. As we look at the fourth quarter here so far in October, November, I'd say it in a 4.5%, which is very consistent with a very solid growing economy. In the end of the day, it's going to work against wage growth. And we see in the underlying consumers we have wage growth, i.e. their paychecks are going up. And so the labor market's flattened out a little bit in terms of job growth and things like that. It's normalizing in terms of unemployment, but you still see underlying wage growth. So the American consumer spending at 4% more November this year versus November last year is a very solid backdrop. The credit quality of the American consumer is strong. And then you hear a lot about this discussion about different rates of growth among different income terciles or thirds. So if we look at the bottom third, middle third, and top third of American income people in the Bank of America customer base, we do see differences, i.e. the higher income and middle income are growing faster. But even the lower income third is still growing, and that's all good. And that means, why is that true? Companies are employing people, they're paying people. Now the labor market's got a little soft, and as we look forward at 4.5, 4.6 unemployment, that is gotten worse, so to speak, than it was at the beginning of the year. But frankly, this goes back to the normalization question. If you look at the 10-year average unemployment, the 20-year, the 30-year, 40-year, it's 5 and 6%, as you go back through time. And so a 4.5 to 4.6 unemployment rate is a very strong relative unemployment rate. It's just a lot of the years it's been below 4.5% has actually been in the last 10 years. So people are very used to numbers now, which were part of the tightness in labor in the 2017, 18, 19 era. Then you had the pandemic and it retightened. And so it's normalizing, but we feel good about all that, and the consumer's in pretty good shape.
And that was Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan speaking there with Bloomberg's Wall Street Week anchor David Weston. Coming up, the Trump administration holds all offshore wind projects. Front page news is next. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Bonnie Quinn in New York. Time now for your front page news. First up, the New York Times leading with President Trump announcing a new class of warships named for himself. Navy officials say the new vessel would be more than twice the size of the largest surface combatant ships the Navy currently fields. According to the Times, analysts suggest they're the wrong approach to current threats. Next up, the Wall Street Journal is reporting the Trump administration has halted the construction of all offshore wind projects. The Interior Department says it was, quote, due to national security risks intensified by the Department of War in recently completed classified reports. The Journal says companies affected are considering potential legal proceedings. And finally, the Washington Post leading with the Trump administration abruptly recalling more than 24 career diplomats from ambassador positions and other senior posts around the world. The Post says the directive has infuriated State Department personnel who say it will leave key embassies without critical leadership and may end the careers of many ambassadors. The American Foreign Service Association says the recall, quote, sends a dangerous message that loyalty to country is no longer enough. And those are your front pages. Let's take a look now at where markets stand just a few hours before the US Open. It does look like risk sentiment is wobbling just a very little bit. We were lower on futures earlier, then higher. Now we're back to flat. But I do want to point out that S&P 500 is within 1/3% of its record, and we're up 21% year to date on the Nasdaq 100. We're down just a little bit on the Bloomberg Dollar Index. That's mostly thanks to euro strength and also yen strength today. But that yen strength, well, will it last? We did have more verbal intervention, but do traders believe that the BOJ will do what it takes and that the Treasury might even intervene? The 10-year yield is down a basis point, or almost 2, in fact, to 4.14. We're lower just slightly across the curve. Let's take a look at precious metals, though, because this is fascinating. We've set 50 records this year in gold, and we look to be higher once again. We're headed for that 4,500 mark on gold. But you see silver as well is higher. Now silver higher by almost 133% this year. That's to gold's 69%. So as Ed Yardeni was pointing out today, it's fascinating because it's not just the precious metals that are being bought by central banks. I mean, that might be part of why we're seeing these gains. But if you look at base metals, they're not seeing those gains. So you can't really attribute this to anything, about industrial production or anything in the actual economy. That said, we're even closer to $1,200,000 on copper today. That is really very much within striking distance, just $13 off that per ton of copper. All right, well, coming up, we're going to take a look at these markets and what exactly this Christmas rally seems to mean, if it's going to hold up into next year, and what the outlook for the Fed is as well. Mads Pedersen of Human Edge Investment Technology is going to join. He's remaining risk-on across portfolios. This is Bloomberg. It's 5:30 a.m. in New York City. Good morning, I'm Vonnie Quinn with your Bloomberg Brief. Here's what you need to know. Gold sets its 50th daily record this year on bets of more U.S. rate cuts and escalating geopolitical tensions. The dollar weakens on yen strength after more verbal intervention in Japan. President Trump warning Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro not to play tough. He's also saying the U.S. has to have Greenland. Plus, Danish pharma giant Novo Nordisk soaring after winning approval to sell a pill version of Wegovy in the United States. So let's take a look at these markets now. 4 hours before the open, 2 days before Christmas, we are maybe going to see that Christmas rally continue. We're above 69.30 on S&P futures. They're pointing higher. Nasdaq 100 futures also pointing higher. The Russell 2000 has been outperforming. That may change today, although these are very, very fractional moves for futures. I do want to point out that the S&P 500 is up nearly 17% so far this year, and the Nasdaq 100 up 21%. So not doing too badly here on these equity benchmarks. Let's move to the bond universe. We're lower by a couple of basis points pretty much across the curve, though a bit more on the longer end, which obviously had seen a bit of a move in recent weeks following the Fed decision. Obviously, we're back now to 481.41, and you see the yen there, it's below 156. The question is, does that hold? It's obviously a little bit stronger than it was when it was above 157, but is that enough of a move for Japan authorities to be comfortable with? All right, let's get to some individual movers now. Stocks to watch. Let's get to London and Lizzie Burden. Lizzie.
Hey, Vonnie. Well, we've got to talk about Novo Nordisk. This is the big stock story here in Europe already. You are seeing gains already in the cash trade in Europe, and this is because the Danish drug maker has got US approval to sell its Wegovy obesity pill, so getting a head start on its rival Eli Lilly. That company expected to get approval for its pill obesity drug in a few months' time into January. So Novo getting to take advantage of the New Year's resolutions and already up 7.6% in the pre-market. Turning over, and we have Huntington Ingalls rising after the US Navy announced that it had picked this company to build a new class of small warship, the Trump class warship indeed, and that's up 4.9% in the pre-market. It's up about 87% so far year to date. Just finally, turning from shipbuilding to shipping, and we have Zim rising in the pre-market, up 7.1% after saying that it's continuing to evaluate proposals from potential buyers. It says it's already turned down an offer from a German suitor because they hadn't valued it highly enough. So stoking interest and looking to be a gainer in the session today, Vonnie.
Yes, that's happened with them a few times in the last few months. We'll see if this turns into something. Lizzie, thank you so much. That is Lizzie Burden. Well, it's been a strong year for stocks and investors look set to carry that bullish mood into 2026. Joining us now is Bloomberg's Jan Patrick Barnard. So, JP, the VIX is at 14. It had its lowest close all year. It's a little surprising to me. Is there any complacency baked in here?
Well, maybe. I would say, like, in overall, what the stock market is doing here is like relying on a very positive background. That's a fact. I mean, earnings are all right. The economy is doing all right. I mean, the job market is in focus, but there's nothing like to really be concerned about. And so I can understand that pricing. But then on the other hand, we have a market and a global story, I would say, where we have lots of, let's say, like little issues that are in the background, lurking in the background. And the market is so extended in its pricing and its positioning that if anything of that goes wrong, then the market is probably going to correct pretty fast and pretty abrupt and maybe a little bit erratic. And that's always something that makes me a little bit worried when investors are maybe not complacent, but like just focusing on the positive stuff, positioning for the positive stuff. And that's all well and good as long as that story continues. But if you totally neglect your downside and they leave your guard down, then that's always a market that can be good for deep corrections, for surprising corrections, and sometimes even for corrections where the catalyst is just like very little, and then everybody's a bit surprised why it's going down, and then it keeps on going, and then you have a minus 10% correction that nobody has seen coming.
Yeah, I mean, would it be a correction across the board, though, JP, or would it be in just certain corners of the market? I mean, you saw when Oracle's results came out, they were good results, you know? It's just the market just took a turn, and then Micron came out, and it took a turn back the other way. And it does seem that, particularly with the AI trade, sentiment is so fragile.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say we have two problems. We have a potential correction if, like, anything in the economic data, jobs, earnings growth, etc., is going wrong on a broader basis, because then there's not enough support in the market to keep it up there. And the other one is what you mentioned is the AI trade, and the AI trade is a bit of puzzling to me, to be honest, because we have two problems there. One is if the AI story collapses and those companies cannot deliver what they are promising and what the market is pricing, then we are due for a hefty correction. And on the other hand, the market has very little focus on what if that AI story is actually successful and companies can use it and save a lot of costs. And those costs, I would guess, are mostly like labor costs when you can replace humans with AIs. And what is that replacement of humans then doing to the consumer, to social systems, to public financing? That's a story that is totally not priced in the market. Arguably, it's probably hard to price it, but it's also something like with the AI trade to keep in mind that it can blow back if it goes wrong, but it could also blow back if it goes sensationally well.
Yeah, definitely don't want to miss that if that happens. JP, thank you so much. A wonderful piece on the Bloomberg. That is Bloomberg's JP Barnard. Now, sticking with this theme, Mads Pedersen of Human Edge Investment Technology says despite 3 years of that bull market, he's staying fully invested. But a bull market is never risk-free. He writes this: the most important development for markets over 2025 and going into 2026 is that the Fed has positioned themselves to be ready to activate the Fed put. Before this will be necessary, we think the bull market has further to go. Mads is CIO and founder now, and he joins us. So, Mads, this Fed put that you speak of, what form would it come in?
Well, the way they have prepared the market, and thank you very much for inviting me in to explain how I see this situation, but the way they have prepared the market, it would probably come in the form that if there is a correction, if credit spreads start to widen, they have said we're already nervous about the labor market, and the most likely is 2 fast cuts of 50 basis points instead of 2 slow cuts of 25. And then I would think if we get a recession in a year where we have a midterm election in the US, we could see the Fed cut to 2% or 1% within a very brief period of time. So that's if the Fed put was to be activated. It would be very large, very fast interest rate cuts to save the economy. And the economy needs to be saved by saving the market because it's the wealthy consumers who spend. So that's the way it works around with the current economy situation.
That's fascinating, but Mads, would that not panic the market? I mean, are we seeing enough recession indicators in order to have that scenario play out?
I don't think it would panic the market because it would come as a reaction. It would come as a reaction to widening credit spreads. And what's driving the market up now is very, very strong earnings, especially from the tech sector. Maybe not from the Magnificent Seven, but from the Fabulous Four, from Microsoft, from Nvidia, but from the tech sector in general now makes 25% of all profits in S&P 500, and they're growing almost 30%. So it's very strong there. And the financing conditions for the rest of the economy, the 2-year has been coming down, the Fed fund has been coming down, and the spreads have been coming in, so tighter credit spreads. So the economy is doing relatively well from the corporate side. It's doing really well in the technology sector, so we don't have to have this blowout yet. But if it happens, the Fed has already said, we are leaning towards doing more, and that normally they end up having to do a lot more than what they say they think is a lot. Yeah. So that's why I say it could be 300 basis points of cuts when we think it's going to be 50 if things roll over.
Well, Mads, you say you're staying fully invested across your strategies and portfolios because if this happens, it's not going to happen for a while. Is that wise? Should you not take some money off the table if you think that there's going to be some kind of correction in the next year?
No, I should stay invested in the interest of my clients. I shouldn't. A lot of our competitors have, of course, reduced their risk in third quarter and the beginning of fourth quarter. And they have maybe moved down in equities. And it's very tempting. I understand. But my interest is to invest the capital, which I have been entrusted with investing, in a way where we look at what's the opportunity set from today on and into the future. Not have I had a good year. It's very tempting when you had a good year. We've been 40% overweight equities to take off the chips. But actually, the fundamental underpinning is still relatively solid. And we will stand ready to go from 100% equities to zero if needed, maybe first to 60 if needed. But it's just not yet because we see this very strong support of the economy from the monetary policy.
Mads, where are you invested? Because I know you look globally, and we'll get to China in a moment. You have an interest in China investing, but how much of your equity investments are located in the United States?
It's a little bit different, but somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 is in the US. So we're overweight from the benchmarks, and we're overweight on top of the benchmark. So if you say we had MSCI World and we already get a fairly large chunk of the US, then we have added US equities on top of that, and we have some technology tilts as well on top of the already large allocations to technology. We have, for example, zero in emerging markets.
Zero in emerging markets. What about China? Because I know that you are at least curious about it. It seemed to become investable again for some time, and the CSI is actually creeping higher once again. Are you looking at China, and will we get stimulus from the Chinese government?
We're looking a lot at China, and 20 years ago I was overweight China, so it's not that I mind being overweight China. It's just I've heard a lot about China wanker in my life, and I've heard way too much about China wanker the last month. They haven't solved the problem, so I'm anxiously waiting to see. Now they have said, we're going to focus on the consumer. We're going to focus on making it more easy to be a Chinese citizen, to be a consumer, to be a saver, to have long-term savings plans. It's a lot easier to say than to do when you have just destroyed the largest asset class, which was housing. So if they follow up the words with action, if there's better savings opportunities, more freedom for people to invest, more transparency on the investment side, then we stand ready to buy. It can be very painful to miss out on China, but it can be also very painful to be invested. So we want to see more certainty that they have learned the lesson that a balanced economy is not only an export economy, because they have put themselves in a situation which is so precarious that even Macron, the French president, felt he had to write about the Chinese trade surplus in Financial Times. That's not normally something the French president needs to write about. So it's a big problem.
You mentioned emerging markets, and I think you said you were not at all exposed to emerging markets. Where are the rest of your allocations then? You said 2/3 to 3/4 in the US, but is it Europe or all developed markets?
We have some all developed markets, and then we have been adding a bit to Europe. We have some dedicated European investors, and I try to remind them that it can be a little risky. But we have some investments, especially on the credit side, in Europe. And we have equities also. We have been adding some equities last year to the European side of it, and then we have a bit of broad global equities, but without emerging market until now. And the big interesting thing is we should kind of theoretically have a lot of emerging market when the Fed is cutting. When the interest rates come down and the dollar is relatively weak, it's the right time to buy emerging market. That's why I'm very interested in it, but I'm very scared of the Chinese not having gained control of their construction sector yet.
So you're waiting to pull the trigger on that. Mads, thank you so much. Yeah. Fascinating conversation there with Mads Pedersen of Human Edge Investment Technology. Now to other top stories trending on the terminal this morning. President Trump announced the Navy will build a new Trump-class battleship as part of the White House push to modernize a fleet that's been hobbled by years of cost overruns and delays. The new ships are part of Trump's efforts to revive U.S. shipbuilding as it seeks to compete against China. Alphabet says it's buying the clean energy developer Intersect Power for $4.75 billion. The move will allow Alphabet to expand its AI data center footprint. Aging U.S. grids are struggling to meet power demand that's booming for the first time in decades, thanks in part to artificial intelligence. And Japan's finance minister has issued her strongest warning yet to currency speculators following the yen's weakening, even after a rise in interest rates. In an exclusive interview with Bloomberg, she said officials have a free hand to take action.
We have an agreement with the United States that allows us to intervene whenever the yen makes an excessive move. That means we have a free hand.
Now, coming up, Novo Nordisk shares bulk up as it wins U.S. approval to sell a pill version of its weight loss drug, Wegovy. More on that next. This is Bloomberg. Some breaking news now. We got that record. Copper above $12,000 a ton. Remember, it was just a few dollars away from that earlier. Well, it has breached that now. So copper trading at a fresh record above $12,000 a ton in London. Dr. Copper, I wonder if it's any signal to this market. All right, President Trump ramps up threats against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, warning him not to play tough, but stopping short of calling for his ouster. This as the U.S. steps up its blockade of oil tankers going to and from Venezuela. Bloomberg's Kasia Klimashinska joins us now from Washington. This isn't going away, Kasia. If anything, it's more threats coming thicker and faster. What is the president actually suggesting that he might do?
Definitely, President Trump is turning up the heat on Nicolas Maduro. Yesterday, Trump spent quite a long time with reporters talking about Venezuela. He said that the U.S. will keep the oil from tankers seized in the waters around the country. And he warned Maduro against challenging or testing the U.S. We also know that the U.S. collected quite significant military presence around the country. And Trump several times floated the possibility of some sort of land strikes. The U.S. is also continuing attacks on boats that the administration is saying is carrying narcotics like cocaine to the U.S. And more than 90 people have already died in those attacks.
Now, when it comes to Ukraine, it appears that all is not quite as it seems when it comes to these so-called constructive peace talks. What is the latest on Ukraine?
Yeah, so also yesterday, President Trump said that those talks are going okay. He didn't really give any more details, didn't even use any other adjectives. Earlier, his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, said that the talks were constructive. They took 2 or 3 days over the weekend in Miami, and Ukraine also gave similar comments that they were constructive, but we didn't really hear anything about the next steps. At some point, the U.S. floated this idea of maybe trilateral talks between the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia. Of course, that would be significant, but we didn't hear any more details about this. President Trump was asked about it yesterday and also didn't comment.
And finally, Kasia, I have to ask you about Greenland, because this has come up again. President Trump seems to really want the island. What is he telling us about what he's going to do?
So he said the U.S. has to have it because of national security concerns. This idea has been around for a while. I think Trump first floated it 6 years ago, talking about potential purchase. Now it's no longer a purchase, it's more some sort of a national security strategy. Trump even appointed a special envoy to pursue this idea, saying that Europe and especially Denmark is not doing enough, that the island is surrounded by Chinese and Russia ships, and the U.S. has to do something about it. Trump also denied that it's about mineral or energy resources that the island also has.
Kasia, thank you so much. That is Bloomberg's Kasia Klimashinska for us in Washington. We're also watching Novo Nordisk, shares surging after the Danish drug maker won approval to sell a pill version of its blockbuster obesity shot Wegovy in the United States. Bloomberg's Copenhagen bureau chief, Sarah Jolin, joins us now for more. How significant is this, Sarah, in terms of the bottom line in particular?
This is definitely a welcome piece of good news for Novo Nordisk that really had a struggling 2025. They made a ton of money, of course, but they really had some challenges. They've been losing market share to Eli Lilly. They had to issue profit warnings. They changed the CEO. They cut staff. It's just really been a brutal year. So ending the year on this positive note is something that's desperately needed for Novo Nordisk.
Yeah, and they had sort of teased that they might get approval for this, but I guess it's coming, just at the right time. Could it help reinvigorate Novo's slumping share price?
We're definitely seeing that today. Like, stock is up almost 8%. And as you say, we did know this was coming. Novo had guided that they expected to get the FDA approval by the end of the year. And we only have a few working days left here in Denmark to get that story out. So we expected it to come, pretty much right about now. We are really looking to see how they will implement or capitalize on this moment. We're expecting Eli Lilly to get their obesity pill approval in March, April next year. So this will give Novo Nordisk a 3 to 4 month head start on Eli Lilly. Can they win some of the market back on this? Can they capitalize on this first mover advantage this time? That's what we're waiting to see to sort of really step into the stock again and really trust it. Because it's only, I won't say only up 8% is a big move for a company that size, but it has also shaved off almost 50% over the last year. So it's a lot to regain for them. Investors need to gain the trust back in the company.
Yeah, and a big challenge for the new CEO, as you say. What other challenges are out there?
He has just dived headfirst into a major transformation of the company. He's laying off a lot of people. They also got a new chairman, and he really wants to, or those two, they really want to change the performance culture at Novo Nordisk, be maybe less Danish, if you will, and a bit more American, a bit more aggressive in the way I go about things. And he is in that transformation now. So that's an internal thing. He has to win the employees over, really get everyone to follow him and where he's going. Then he's also looking at an obesity market where competition is rising. Now he's gaining this advantage, but it's just sort of like an arms race, what Eli Lilly will do next. Now, more competitors are also entering the space. We just saw Pfizer buying Metsera after a bidding war with Novo Nordisk. So it's not just a space that they have to themselves anymore, or duopoly. It's really getting more crowded.
Well, and in fact, the CEO is going to be on Bloomberg Television this morning, so we'll be hearing from him. That's Sarah Jolin. Thank you so much. That's 8:15 New York time. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Bonnie Quinn in New York. Now a look at what's ahead today. We get the second reading of third quarter GDP. That's at 8:30 Eastern. Personal spending will be the one to watch there. And then we get Conference Board consumer confidence numbers. That's at 10 a.m. Eastern. And the Treasury will auction $70 billion of 5-year notes at 1 p.m. Now, I want to point to something that happened just a few moments ago. Look at that. Copper trading above $12,000 a ton in London. This is a record. This is the first time copper has ever been above $12,000. It's thanks to mine outages. It's thanks to trade dislocations due to President Trump's tariff wars. And, of course, it is essentially people bidding up copper in order to make sure they have enough of it. Well, that is it for Bloomberg Brief. Surveillance is next.